rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective. I am your host, Rick. All right. Couple of things. I'm going to give you a little insider baseball here with the show. First of all, yes, last night, Mrs. Whiskey and I went on a date, and it was actually more of an afternoon date. But still, it was a date. I mean, come on. And anyway, we had a wonderful time. Thank you very much for, giving me the time off to go and do that because, I'll be honest, this show and, when I embarked on this, it didn't really take up too much of my time, but because since I've expanded it, and I'm not complaining. I love this show. I love doing it. I love running, everything I see when you guys are in the chats and everything else. And, that obviously it makes my heart fill with joy to know that you guys are coming here to listen to whatever it is that I've put together, because let's face it, it's all a surprise to you in terms of what I talk about. So that being said, my other ventures, like with TGRN, and of course, just plugging myself, Bourbon and Backroads, back on tonight and tomorrow, midnight Central Time, midnight till 2 Central Time. I know that's very late, but anyway, I get it for all of you East Coasters, but Saturday, maybe you'll be able to pick it up Saturday. But anyway, all of that put together, occasionally we do have to take some days off and stuff. So, anyway, we had a wonderful time, great company, and we ended up coming back with a half case of wine again. Anyway, it's some really good wine, though. I got to admit, it's good wine. So, not that I'm turning into a wine drinker. I do drink wine, but bourbon and whiskey are obviously my, whiskey as a whole is obviously my favorite, but I do drink wine occasionally. All right. Second thing, in terms of some of the inside baseball on the show here, there was some conversation in the chat with regards to like the startup video that it runs on Rumble and that kind of stuff. I try to keep things a little fresh, but I do understand that there's that I get comfortable in things too. It's always nice that the intro is the same, that kind of thing. But I do understand that some people like to shake things up a little bit. And so whenever something like that comes along, I just ask the question, are we getting a little tired of what's going on? Do I need to change some stuff? That's all. It's just a matter of making sure that my listening audience, my visual viewers, maintain some sort of entertainment value. Because if it ends up becoming stale, then it's no longer any fun for anybody to come and watch or listen. And so I want to try and keep things fresh and exciting and entertaining for you, because that's the whole purpose. I mean, I'm basically making sure that you guys keep interest to keep coming back every single time. So don't take offense at anything like that. It's just me simply asking the question, hey, because sometimes, I get so wrapped up in stuff that I tend to forget. I tend to miss when things, aren't working. And so, yeah, I'm trying to keep, everybody happy as far as the P1s are concerned, for sure, because you guys have been longtime watchers and listeners, and I, I respect and value your opinions on this show just as much, if not more, than what you respect of mine. And so I'm just making sure that we keep things, fresh and exciting and new, and that it keeps you entertained in terms of what needs to be done here on the program. So toward that end, I do go, and during the beginning startup, the countdown video. I have had a couple of critiques saying, well, why is it, 5 minutes or whatever? Well, because it gives me an opportunity to, to set things up. So for an example, you'll notice that I always put in the chats, well, I won't say always because I have skipped some, but most of the time I put in the chats, hello, Whiskey Warriors. Now, that doesn't necessarily, it is a greeting. Okay, don't get me wrong. It's a greeting to everybody. All right. The thing about it is that also sets up my program that I use that allows to pick up people's chats across all of the platforms, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, X, or Rumble. And that also allows that same chat program to not only it's a check to make sure that I can see all of those, and it also makes it so that I can go and put them on the screen when I put them up here. And so that's what that Hello Whiskey Warriors is. Doesn't necessarily mean that I haven't been watching some of the chats. Like, for an example, Rumble opens up, almost immediately when I set up the show. So when Rumble opens up, you guys can generally come in and start chatting and stuff. I do see that because I do have the chat window up for that. Facebook, X, and YouTube wait until the actual stream starts before you can actually get in and start talking. This is part of the reason, or one of the reasons why I like Rumble, because if I go and open up the Rumble channel an hour early or whatever, you guys can come in and you can start chatting amongst yourselves if you so desire. Usually I try to hit somewhere between half an hour to 15 minutes before, but a lot of that depends upon what's going on in my day, in terms of how quickly I can actually get the Rumble channel opened up. So there's a little inside baseball for you. So again, the Hello Whiskey Warriors is twofold. One is to greet you if I haven't already greeted you. And the second thing is to make sure that all the chats line up and go into the chat consolidation program so that I can see whenever anybody comes in and throws a chat in there, throws, a message in the chats. So anyway, all right. Whew. Long monologue. Let's get into it. Definitely Not Karen is up right now for the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you are of mine, please stand, remove your hat if you're wearing one, like me. And make sure you place your hand over your heart and follow along as Definitely Not Karen recites the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. And I do appreciate Definitely Not Karen, for setting that up and sending that in. All right. If you would like to hear your rendition of the Pledge played here on the program, please do me a favor. Record yourself reciting the Pledge in your style. And once you have done that, take that audio file, video file, whatever kind of file it is, attach it to an email. If you're a 3 Chevy kind of person, you can attach it with staplers, tape, it's a paper clip, whatever it is. Attach it to that email and send it off to fans, FANS, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans, FANS, at AmericanPerspective.online. So there you go. And yes, U.S. Abbey Girl, that's what we do. So there you go. All right. Yes, speak of the devil. 3 Chevy, were your ears burning? Anyway. Okay. So let's get on to tonight's headline sponsor. I'm wearing one of their shirts. I'm wearing the We the People Liberty Bell shirt right here. You can see the Liberty Bell on my shoulder right here. And This is from theflagshirt.com. Now, of course, this is a men's cotton polo that I'm wearing. I like all of those. But you can go and check out all of their styles. You can head off to theflagshirt.com. That's theflagshirt.com. And you can check out all of their styles, whether it's men's, women's, kids, made in the USA. They've got all kinds of accessories. They're red, white, and blue. And right now, they are running their Memorial Day sale. Let me go ahead and bring it up here. They are running their Memorial Day sale. And for Memorial Day, which obviously is Monday, and Memorial Day sale is $15 off when you spend $75. What's interesting is if you can spend $75, you'll also get free shipping because they do free shipping on orders of $75 or more. So that's a double whammy. You should go and do that. Well, to get your $15 off, you would use code MEM, M-E-M. That's Mike Echo Mike for you phonetic spellers. 15, MEM 15 in the promo code box at checkout, and that'll get you your $15 off when you spend $75. But I know not everybody can do that. So I have put together a special pricing for you, or a special promo code, I should say. If you go to flagshirt.americanperspective.online, that's flagshirt.americanperspective.online, you will be presented with a promo code that you can then copy and paste in the promo code box at checkout at theflagshirt.com and get $5 off your order. So go to flagshirt.americanperspective.online to get your promo code to copy and paste in the promo code box at checkout at theflagshirt.com and get $5 off your order on American Perspective. That's theflagshirt.com and get yourself patriotized. Yeah, it's very patriotic. In fact, the wife, Mrs. Whiskey, is going to have me put flags up on our fence posts on the road for Memorial Day. Just the little ones. I mean, we've got the big ones and stuff like that. I've got a 6x10 flag I'm putting up on my flagpole because it's the largest that the flagpole officially can sustain in terms of its height. There are requirements. I don't know where, there's you can find them on I think the American Legion has them. There's several flag sellers that have them, but they have certain restrictions, and it's not like a legal requirement, but it's more of a recommended standard. Like if you have a 30-foot flagpole, like I do, the biggest flag that you can run off of it is a 6x10. If you have something, smaller, you have to go with some smaller flags. It's a proportional thing. So anyway, also don't forget, if I forget to tell you tomorrow night, don't forget on Monday, the one day that when you lower the flag to half staff, it only stays at half staff until noon. Then you bring it up to the top of the flagpole at noon. And that was representing, the half staff is representing the fact that we're memorializing all those lives who have been lost throughout the many, many, many years from wars. And then it goes to full staff to commemorate the fact that the country, while in mourning, will still continue on and obviously stand for a beacon of freedom, or at least that's what I've been told. So anyway, so there you go. All right, let's go ahead and kick this thing off. Well, Letitia James has spoken out about the fact that she is under investigation and it potentially has broken the law in terms of a felony over her mortgage issues. The one in particular that I think they're talking about is the fact the power of attorney. But there are other transgressions that she has had, which indicate sort of a pattern of lying on mortgage applications and mortgage forms in order to get, let's say, more favorable loan conditions. And somebody called that out, and she ended up, she is now being investigated by the FBI, I believe, or the Department of Justice itself. Well, she tries to explain her way out of why she did this. Yeah. Let's just take a listen, and yeah, you'll kind of see.
As you know, we filed a lawsuit against Donald Trump and his family. We secured $454 million judgment against him, which is on appeal. The case is on appeal. I have no idea when that case will be decided. This investigation into me is nothing more than retribution. It's baseless. It has to do with the fact that on a power of attorney, I mistakenly indicated that I was a state of Virginia, but prior to that, I had indicated to the mortgage broker that, in fact, in bold cap letters, that I am not a resident of Virginia and never will be. And in the mortgage application, I indicated that I would not live in Virginia and I was not a resident. They just took the power of attorney and they're using that as a basis for enforcement for their investigation, when in reality, the power of attorney was never used to determine my eligibility for a mortgage for my niece for a home in the state of Virginia. My niece who has children, and because I am a bid on, I wanted her to have a home.
Yeah. Okay, well, so I got a couple of problems with this, and some other legal minds have got the same kinds of questions for Miss James over this whole thing. First, it's not just the power of attorney, sweetheart. It's the power of attorney, but you also got a home loan in the past for your primary residence, I believe, or at the time it was your primary residence, by claiming that your father was your husband. Okay, so there's one. Then you have another building that you purchased. I don't know if it was your primary residence or not. Doesn't make a difference. But another building that you purchased that was actually laid out for 5 apartments. And yet you claim that there was only 4 because the 4 apartment space gained you more favorable conditions in order to be able to purchase it in New York. So you add that plus this power of attorney situation, which, again, Letitia James is an attorney. She should know that lying on a document, even if it was a quote-unquote mistake, lying on the document that is a legal document notarized, to prove that you're, again, that's the whole point. She's trying to get out of this by saying, yeah, I just did a mistake. It's okay. No, you're an attorney. You don't have the opportunity to make mistakes like this. You should know. You should know. And what's even more delicious about this whole thing is that she is being investigated for the exact same thing that essentially she accused, and as she pointed out in that video, obtained a $454 million settlement. Again, it's on appeal for just the exact same thing. It lying and inflating. In Donald Trump's case, it was lying and inflating the value of his properties, which she lied on the mortgage application too. Now, the only difference between Letitia James and Donald Trump is Donald Trump did it, but the banks and everybody else had their own, third-party separate appraisals of the properties and generally tended to agree with him, loaned him the money. He went ahead and paid it all back, and they were like, hey, yeah, we're not. It was essentially a crime without a victim in that case. And here with Letitia James, yeah, she lied on documents. He didn't lie on a power of attorney. He didn't lie on the mortgage papers. All he did was say, these are the valuations of my properties. The banks had their own evaluations done. They generally tended to agree. They loaned him the money. They got the money back. Everything was good. But lying on the power of attorney and the other applications is considered fraud. And yes, Letitia James, you're a lawyer. You should know that. And you should not have done it, period. Well, she went ahead and did it. Now, the funny thing is, she's now basically by claiming that she mistakenly did this, that means she actually is saying in front of everybody here on this video, yeah, I did it. It was a mistake, but yeah, I did it. Yeah. So, anyway. Well, Letitia, we'll see what happens to you. Because just like you weren't very forgiving or, you know, I mean, now keep in mind too, that law that she used to gain that $454 million settlement, is also a law that had never been utilized in New York history, and especially was being used in a novel way. So again, if it makes it out of appeal, I'll be kind of surprised. Of course, that is New York. So. All right. So Jasmine Crockett, yes, the brilliant. I'm being facetious. Second runner-up to AOC's brilliance. Being facetious there too. She apparently is mad because the Department of Justice has finally ended some police reform agreements. Now, here's the thing. The way this works is if a police organization is found to have broken the law themselves, then what happens is the federal government can step in. And the federal government, if they step in, will do things like observation, monitoring, maybe perform updated training, do all kinds of things in order to sort of revamp the police department and make it to where the police department runs better. Well, the Department of Justice, according to the Gateway Pundit, the agreements which were initiated under the Biden administration, in these two particular ones, stemmed from investigations following the deaths of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. They were designed to implement federal oversight and reforms targeting the alleged civil rights violations by law enforcement in both of these cities. Well, according to ABC News, the agreements had been delayed in federal court due to multiple extension requests from the Department of Justice, which had not met filing deadlines required by the judges who were overseeing the cases. So this week, the Donald Trump DOJ filed motions to end both of them, stating that the local governments in Louisville and Minneapolis had already taken actions to reform their police departments totally independently. In other words, the Department of Justice was satisfied that both of these municipalities had implemented the proper reforms and no longer need federal oversight. Well, Representative Crockett, who is a first-term, I should say, Democrat, and a member of the far-left squad, she took to X and was outraged at the DOJ's move. She said the Biden DOJ found the police in Louisville and Minneapolis were violating people's civil rights, so they created a plan to fix it with rules the departments had to follow, she posted. Now Trump's DOJ wants to shut it down. Like Breonna Taylor and George Floyd's lives didn't mean a damn thing. Well, we all know about George Floyd. George Floyd was a fentanyl death of his own doing, and so on and so forth. But anyway, now Breonna Taylor, I'll be honest with you, she was essentially a victim of circumstance. She happened to be in the boyfriend's apartment at the time that the no-knock warrant was served, and unfortunately she did die as a part of that firefight. But the boyfriend is, or was, accused of certain crimes, and so far the evidence points to him. The evidence kind of points that she knew about it too, but anyway. Crockett continued and said, feels less like justice and more like protecting politics over people. Well, her post quickly drew a response from the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, Harmeet Dillon. And she pushed back on it. And she says, Congresswoman, educate yourself. Minnesota is already under a state consent decree, and Louisville is hiring its own monitor. Both cities have changed their police practices. Dusted and done. Harmeet finished her response by saying the federal government is not the answer to everything. Hardly anything, in fact. So, yeah, these police reforms, folks, are designed to be temporary and only when necessary, because again, this is sort of a government overreach between federal and into state territories. And so, again, I knowing the Constitution like I do, this kind of falls into that same general realm of if it's not in the Constitution, then it shouldn't be a part of it. But at the same time, this may fall under the whole, trying to keep the peace between states sort of deal. I mean, you can make an argument for that. But anyway, yeah, it's not designed to go and just like be 100% all the time. And that's what these Democrats want to do. They want full on government control. That's exactly what they want. They are looking for the communist, socialist, and I put both of those kind of together, sort of government here in America. They want the federal government to do all of the things that the federal government is currently doing that are unconstitutional. They want that. They don't want people to be self-reliant, self-sustaining. They don't want that. They're not looking for that. And so anyway, that's the situation there. Well, she obviously is, Jasmine Crockett is looking to control everybody's lives. Well, The View is under fire. And there was an insider that has basically pointed out that yeah, you guys might want to cool it on your political chatter. So there's an insider that was saying that Disney's boss, Bob Iger, kind of told them, hey, you guys need to like stop doing this. All right. We need to stop doing this. And so now there seems to be a bit of a clash of views on the talk show. The Daily Beast reported about an apparent fit between the ladies of The View and the top brass at the company, going all the way up to Disney CEO Bob Iger, about a desire for the hosts to cool off on the politics. Notably, all six of the co-hosts, that means Goldberg, Behar, Hostin, Haynes, and Griffin and Anna Navarro, voted for Kamala Harris in 2024 and are complete outspoken critics, albeit morons, being critics of Donald Trump. So apparently, according to the Daily Beast, the ABC News' president, and I'm not even going to try and say, I think it's Karamentovic. Yeah, there we go. Convened a meeting with The View's executive producer, Brian Teta, and its host, and suggested that the panel needed to broaden its conversation beyond just a predominant focus on politics, unlike this show, which this show I pretty much say, hey, this is current events and politics. This is just what's going to be happening. So there you go. But anyway, the president, ABC News president, highlighted episodes with celebrity guests, and he said that those were the highly rated ones and encouraged them to lean into such coverage moving forward. So apparently the ABC president is attempting to try and save the View. Well, according to this particular report, Ana Navarro forcefully pushed back, insisting that their audience wants their perspective on politics. I don't know who would want any of those folks' perspective on politics because, yeah, they're always in the wrong. But that being said, Navarro reportedly took her message directly to Bob Iger. And basically said that he responded back and said, and he reaffirmed that the show needed to tone down the political rhetoric while expressing his support for the View. So, yeah. And, of course, the women, the hosts, basically said, yeah, these requests were silly, and we're just going to keep doing our thing. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, we'll see how much longer it's actually going to be. So, yeah. All right. Well, we'll see what happens and, who's going to end up winning. Speaking of winning, the Supreme Court has upheld a Trump order removing Biden appointees from federal boards. However, what's interesting about this particular situation is that they called out specifically the chairman of the Fed. The chairman of the Fed as a protected class. So, the Thursday ruling, that was yesterday, of course I was off, but the Thursday ruling basically said that stated that Chief Justice John Roberts agreed to temporarily halt the reinstatement of the National Labor Relations Board member Gwen Wilcox and Merit Systems Production Board member Kathy Harris, who were abruptly terminated by the Trump administration this year. This is the ruling that came after Chief John Roberts agreed those. Both of those people had challenged that their terminations were unlawful in separate lawsuits filed in D.C. federal court. However, the Supreme Court suggested that it could block attempts to fire Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, who, according to Trump, of course, and Trump and him have been going back about those interest rates, saying that Powell hasn't cut interest rates fast enough and those kinds of things. But the issue was whether or not these actual board members can stay in their jobs. Well, the three liberal justices, of course, said, yeah, they should be able to stay, while everybody else was like, yeah, you're gone. We don't need you here. So there you go. Anyway, Kagan wrote that her colleagues were telegraphing what's going to happen because they're basically saying, this is Sotomayor. Kagan wrote this, and Sotomayor and Jackson, agreed. Not since the 1950s or even before has a president without legitimate reason tried to remove an officer from a classic independent agency. Yeah. There are no independent agencies, folks. I don't know where these people or where the Supreme Court gets off. The Federal Reserve is supposed to be an independent agency. That one has been codified in law, but all of these other agencies fall under the direct control and serve at the pleasure of the executive. So I'm still trying to figure out what the hell is going on with all of this. So we'll just have to see what's going to happen here. So, yeah. Anyway. Also, too, case in point, the some of the federal courts have in turn blocked more of President Trump's orders. So sooner or later, the Supreme Court is going to have to get involved and rein in these lower courts and lower court judges and all of this stuff. Or, better yet, we all get out and vote for all of our favorite people in 2026, gain a massive majority, and then Congress just cuts them all off at the knees. Because what a lot of people don't understand, and especially leftists, because they, this wonderful thing known as the Constitution of the United States is like kryptonite or garlic to vampires. Either way you want to go, kryptonite to Superman or garlic to vampires. And they don't seem to understand that under Article 3, there is only one court that is created constitutionally in the Constitution, and that is the Supreme Court, and that the lower courts are at the whim and behest and creation, basically, of Congress. They can make or destroy them anytime that they want. So, yeah, let's keep that in mind in 2026 when we're getting ready to vote for all of that. All right. So a lot of people have been saying, shifting gears here, a lot of people are saying that, the whole chance that you saw that Trump showed, CNN, of course, was saying this. There were a lot of different mainstream media outlets that are saying this. That no, those aren't genocidal chants. Yeah, it's just like, from the river to the sea is not a genocidal chant of the Palestinians. But anyway, there's now new evidence that has come out from Just the News. It says Biden-era reports and genocide expert confirms Trump's human rights fears for South African farmers. So here we go. Yeah, they're, the left keeps saying, oh, no, they're not in trouble. They're, because obviously they protect the white folks, so well. But anyway, the Biden era government reports. So leftists, if you're listening to this program, I'm just going to point this out. Your leftist geriatric, not their leader, Joe Biden, and his administration were also saying the same thing. They were all saying the same thing. Okay? So, yeah, they raising flags, of course, about this entire thing. So this has been going on for a few years now, people. This isn't just something that just all of a sudden popped up that Donald Trump just created in his head and all of a sudden said, hey, you know what? Yeah, that's a problem. No, it's been going on for a while. So, anyway, they've had a background of violence. So the Biden-era State Department reported on human rights conditions in South Africa, citing data from a civil society organization. Back in 2021 and 2022, there were 748 total farm attacks and more than 100 killings targeting white South Africans. So, yeah. Yep. Yeah, but he just, Trump just magically said, yeah, we're just going to do this. So, yeah. Anyway. The report did note, however, that although some advocacy groups asserted that the white farmers were being targeted for burglaries, home invasions, and killings because of their race, it's unclear whether the attacks are actually just part of South Africa's exorbitant crime rate. So they're trying to yeah, but maybe, so anyway. So the country is violent. And is the most, according to the piece here, the most violent in Africa, boasting the world's third highest murder rate, according to 2023 data, leading many observers to suggest that the violence experienced by the white South African farmers does not meet the traditional definitions of genocide. However, Genocide Watch specifically cites a failure to prosecute the murderers who targeted the white farmers, which basically says it contributes to a culture of impunity as the general murder rate remains high. So in other words, because the general rate is high, there is a possibility that these are just statistics. However, they also, and this one is specifically pointing out that just like here in America, where we have illegal immigrants that are killing people and just being let out of jail on their own recognizance due to the Soros bought and paid for DAs in some locations, that this also could be one of those. But anyway, Genocide Watch also agrees that Malema and his Marxist Economic Freedom Front party encourages the murders, which are meant to terrorize farmers into emigrating from South Africa, meaning leaving South Africa. And noted that white farmers are defenseless because South Africa outlawed private gun possession and disbanded the mutual protection cooperatives. Wait, let me read that again. Because South Africa outlawed private gun possession. Thank God we have the Second Amendment here in the Constitution, even though it's consistently under attack to be removed. But anyway. Oh, well, the left in particular, and here, let me go ahead and I got to take a second for a drink here. Got to wet my whistle. All right. So the left is being investigated. Well, let me rephrase that. The left organization that raises funds for Democrats, Act Blue, is now defying, or I should say declining, to testify in Congress. So Congress, in three powerful House committees yesterday, threatened to issue subpoenas after several current and former top officials of the Democrat online fundraising platform Act Blue declined to testify in a probe into possible foreign and fraudulent political donations. Now, don't forget, and you'll recall, there was those reports that came out that basically Act Blue was harvesting people's names and using that as their voter donor lists, but that I believe it was Veritas. I'm not 100% certain, but I believe it was Veritas that went out and actually found many of these people, and many of these people had no idea that they even donated to Act Blue. But apparently somebody had gotten a hold of their name and information and were able to utilize their name and information in order to make anonymous donations. So, yeah. Anyway, so I can't even imagine why they would refuse to go and testify if they've got nothing wrong with it. So anyway, the House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan, House Oversight Chairman James Comer, and the House Administration Chairman Brian Steele, Steele, S-T-E-I-L, revealed in the letters that several of the witnesses initially agreed to voluntary transcribed interviews, then pulled back through their lawyers earlier this month. So now they are threatening, because here in the letter, all chairmen wrote these letters to the witnesses. In those letters, it said, as we have explained, the committees are examining allegations that Act Blue, a leading political fundraising organization, allowed bad actors, including foreign actors, to exploit the company's online platform to make fraudulent political donations. See, now they're even attempting to try and give these presidents and high up operatives an out by saying, hey, just come here and explain to us some of these, we're going to ask some questions about this and we're just going to explain this. And the letters continue, and they also state fraudulent political donations corrupt American elections could amount to interstate criminal conduct. And the letters laid out the testimony flip-flops for each of the witnesses, including ActBlue's former chief revenue officer, Peter Slutsky. Well, that's an appropriate name. Anyway, on April 21st, this person named Mr. Oronato, who is the lawyer representing them, indicated that you had agreed to appear for a voluntary transcribed interview and begin the process of scheduling your appearance. However, on May 7th, Mr. Oronato notified the committee that you had changed course and would now not appear for a voluntary transcribed interview. So, yeah. They are probably going to issue, the lawmakers, meaning the committees, said that they are prepared to resort to the compulsory process if necessary to obtain compliance with our request. So in other words, they asked them nicely. Now they're attempting to subpoena them. So yeah. Oh, we'll see if what happens there in terms of what's going on with all that. All right. I have finally had an answer to the question, and ironically, that I've had for quite some time. But now I have an answer to the question that I'm actually really kind of surprised about in terms of the angle that it came from. On this program, I have pointed out multiple times that I personally have a hard time coming up with a U.S. American city that has anything but Democrat leadership. And I know for like most of the major cities that I'm aware of, I'm sitting here and I'm going, okay, trying to figure out, okay, what cities might have Republican mayors or Republican council people or something like that. Well, this article came out and I said, oh my gosh. So here in front page, there's apparently only 8 Republican mayors left. In April, there were 9 Republican mayors in America's 50 biggest cities. In May, that number fell to 8. So Democrats are celebrating the Omaha's mayoral election win as a proof that the Republicans are out of step with America, which is actually really evidence, true evidence, that it's the cities that are the problem, that they've been drinking the Kool-Aid, let's say, in the urban centers of America, because as I've pointed out to you on multiple occasions, we don't actually have red states or blue states. We have a couple of red states. We have a couple states that haven't been hit with the woke mind virus that is the Democrats in their urban centers as of yet. But some have been more purple than necessarily red or blue. And even states like that you would normally typically associate with Democratic places are not, such as Washington, Oregon, California. When you get outside of the cities and into the more rural areas, you'll find things get more conservative the farther out you go. The problem in those states, for the most part, is that, unfortunately, the majority of the populace does live in those cities. And they all have the woke mind virus and, so on and so forth. So, now I have my answer. Out of the 50th biggest cities, the 50th, the 50 biggest cities, I should say, there's only 8 Republican mayors. And that number is shrinking. So, the nation's cities have fallen out of step with what America has in terms of all of it. So they are now, as this piece points out, there was a time when American cities were symbols of progress, but they have long since become sinkholes of decline, clinging to a handful of industries that employ a tiny fraction of their population as evidence of their relevance. When Americans think of big cities, they think of tall buildings and social problems. So there you go. All right. Anyway. So apparently it looks like out of 50 cities, we only have 8 that are Republican mayors in charge of them. All right. This last subject, and I'll be honest with you, may take me a little longer to finish, so I may go over the hour, but I do want to, it's very important. One of the things, and this was a discussion that happened to come up last night during the double date that we had. Yes, we had another couple that was there, but we were discussing how the world is changing, and how the world is basically proven. They're also a Christian. I'm going to call them Christian. I don't know what the actual denomination they were, but another Christian couple, and of course us, Mrs. Whiskey and I, we believe in God, the one true God, and that Jesus is our Savior, and those kinds of things. And the discussion, because they know, that other couple knows what I do here on this program. And so because of that, the discussion sometimes I get pulled into certain things. And in this particular conversation that happened, we were discussing about the proof of God's existence. Okay. The proof of God's existence. And one of the things that I pointed out is that there have been many scientific discoveries that literally point to not only God himself, for an example, or the actual events that are in the Bible. For an example, Noah's Ark and the Great Flood. Archaeologists have found what they believe to be Noah's Ark, and geologists have pointed out the fact that there was a time that the earth was flooded. And so all of this is essentially, and I'm using those just as examples. Those aren't the only examples. I mean, they have discovered what they believe to be Jesus's tomb, where the rock was rolled away, and so on and so forth. There is evidence in science all over the place that talks about the great event. When you talk about like the Big Bang Theory, I mean, there's got to be like some sort of a Big Bang, right? Where did all of this material and matter come from? It didn't just supposedly it didn't just like magically appear. Well, but yet it did. Even when you talk about theories like the Big Bang Theory and how the universe is expanding, and they've been able to at least determine that that's expanding. All right. But now there's this piece in the Daily Wire, and it's kind of interesting that it came up with all of this. But there's this piece in the Daily Wire that discusses why modern physics actually points to God. And one of the things that the piece talks about is that even atheist-leaning scientists are trying to understand that, well, wait a minute, there are certain constants. Okay? There are certain constants in physics that tend to prove that not only of intelligent design, but that there is a level of fine tuning to the universe. For an example, okay, physicists have discovered 25 physical constants, unchanging actual numbers that define the structure of our reality. Okay? Now, there's a couple in particular, fine structure constant or cosmological constant, but both of those are very crucial. Those numbers determine how atoms are actually held together, how stars actually form, and how fast the universe is expanding. Now, the biggest question, of course, is why or how can we explain these strange numbers that show up in all of these different places and yet are constants? They are a constant rate within all of these different areas. And so one of the things that they've discovered since this is basically this idea that these numbers are so precise, they are so exact, that it indicates that there is a fine tuning to all of this. And scientists have slowly realized that even if these constants were just slightly out of whack, it would throw off the entire universe as we know it. That, in fact, the universe itself would be completely chaotic. It wouldn't be designed in its specific format like what we see. In other words, in this piece, they say no galaxies, no chemistry, no life. It's as though these constants, these 25 specific numbers that they have found, have a purpose. That they were placed in these spots specifically. And one of the things that they use is, like I pointed out, the cosmological constant. So its value is roughly 10 to about the power of negative 122. So just think about that. That's a decimal point followed by 121 zeros and then a number 1. So think of how infinitely fine that actually is. I know some people are like, yeah, I'm not a math major, I don't really care. But just think about this. The accuracy of that number. Now, if it were even just a slight bit higher or lower, scientists believe that the universe itself would either collapse back on itself or expand so rapidly that no structures would ever form. If the universe has that kind of precise numerical value, there is only one answer to that question, and that is some sort of intelligent design. Now, you add that, take that little piece of information, and you add that to some of the things that we see within the Bible that have already been scientifically, archaeologically, geologically proven. And there's only one answer that we can come up with. And think about this too. Okay? At the time of our founding, all right? At the time of our founding, there were two general schools of thought in terms of religion. One was that everybody was religious for the most part. But the second school of thought essentially was you either believed in what was known as the natural law, and also the revealed God in the Bible. Both of them point to a single creator, a single God, and this is part of the reason why I maintain that this country was founded upon Judeo-Christian principles, that there is only one God. But back in the day, some, not all, but some of the founders believed in what was known as the natural God, the God that was revealed through nature and science. And then there were those who believed in the revealed God that was going along in the Bible. And both of them are the same being. But yet they both are representations of a creator, one who created the universe in such a specific set and specific format that we are able to now, as many hundreds of years later, figure out and demonstrate that there are certain consistencies, certain things that show up in all kinds of places as as our human brains try and wrap ourselves around this wonderful world that we live in and this universe that we live in, to try and wrap ourselves around and say, these are certain consistencies. And you can see this even in nature, because they were talking about with Antarctica, they kept talking about how the ice was melting. The ice was melting. And just this year, they discovered that no, the ice actually on Antarctica has been growing. That it's actually gained ice, not lost it. And when you look at things like we expel carbon dioxide naturally as our byproduct of just us breathing. And yet there are plants that do the exact opposite. We breathe in oxygen and nitrogen, and we breathe out carbon dioxide. The plants breathe in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen. These are all things that have been discovered by science that point to one thing and one thing only. And that is that there is an intelligent being out there who is controlling all of this. So to sit here and deny the existence of God based on even our own scientific findings, as limited as it is within our own minds, to sit there and deny the existence of God shows that even the smallest of the small-minded people that we are really nothing but a bunch of morons. Now, there's more information in that article. I suggest that you read it than what I'm covering right now. But I'm telling you, folks, conservatives, especially religious conservatives, we're right. And the atheist Dems are wrong. All right, that is it for me for this evening. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, head on over to rumble.com, get yourself an account. It is free. And once you are signed up and signed in, make sure that you search up the American Perspective channel and hit that green follow button to get notified every time I go live. Also, too, don't forget to give me those thumbs up, or if you want, thumbs down, because let's face it, everybody has an opinion. Across all of my platforms, whether it's X, YouTube, Facebook, and of course, the aforementioned Rumble. We will see you all tomorrow night, 1 hour later, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on American Perspective. Have a great rest of your weekend, and good night, everybody.